7 years ago, the USA Network ended one of their most successful television series to date, Psych, in 2014. This show was one of my personal favorites in terms of shows that I never actually watched for technical aspects, but rather shows that just made me smile. I have not watched the network much since the show ended, but I remember the commercials starring Sean and Gus, Adrian Monk, and others that would claim how USA Network knew their characters under the slogan, "Characters Welcome." And a truer sentence has never been spoken. Sean and Gus are everything, which comes to absolutely no surprise that they've starred in a number of specials following the show's series finale, including a musical and now 3 feature films, the last 2 of which aired on Peacock. Heck, the creators of the show have plans for 3 more movies if they were given the chance to make them. I find that amazing. I mean, I wish they would put a little bit more energy into making one comeback for Monk, but, I'll take it. Now we're talking about Psych 3. This is Gus. In preparation for a shotgun wedding before the birth of baby Guster, Sean and groom Zilla Gus go rogue in an attempt to track down Selene's estranged husband as Lassiter grapples with the future of his career. While the official synopsis of the film gives you a slight idea on what this movie's about, it's kind of a misdirect because a majority of the film follows around Gus and Sean as they discover Gus's fiancée, Selene, isn't exactly who she claims to be, which is a big deal for Gus, who has never had much luck in the relationship field. She's about to give birth too, so it's a mess. And so there's weight to the primary mystery of the film, but there's a ton of individual character arcs as well. Sean feels like he's losing his best friend and that their lives are kind of being torn apart. Lassiter's in the film as well, trying desperately to prove that he still has what it takes to be a cop, even though, he might not. Sean and Juliet have to grapple with the fact that they're getting a little bit older, and the window for having kids of their own is closing if that's what they want to do. There's so much going on in this movie, character-wise, that they're proving that these characters are everything, and their chemistry is still top-notch. Maybe they keep making these movies not because of a story or mystery that they want to tell, but rather they keep making them because they want to keep hanging out and have fun doing another story, whatever that story is. Now, it's not a perfect movie or anything, obviously. When you start it, you're never going to get a, this is a movie vibe. No, it's essentially a long episode of the TV show, same music, same theme song, editing, transition sound effects, the list goes on. It's not cinematic whatsoever. To call it a movie is a stretch, just as it has been the last few times. If it were cinematic, it would actually immediately feel wrong. It wouldn't feel like Psych, right? So it's a pet peeve to call it a movie, but a small pet peeve overall. My bigger complaint has more to do with something that I've mentioned almost every single time for one of these movies, and even the latter half of the show itself. The show began with a gimmick that's all but completely ignored at this point. The title, Psych, is short for psychic. Sean has a photographic memory that he kind of puts into a mind bank of sorts, and then he will act like a buffoon, stating that he's a psychic, and then he'll solve crimes, stuff like that. It's the gimmick of the show. Both the idea that he's a fraud claiming to be a psychic and his photographic memory, all of that. That's why I watched the show. And that is all but forgotten now, because it's all about characters and what makes them special without gimmicks. And that's fine, but for instance, there's an entire sequence in this film where Sean notices some hard-to-see wording on a purse, and so he's in a bathroom trying to quickly write it out with lipstick on a mirror. And it's a humorous scene because he's fighting Gus, because he needs that purse to see what it says so that he can write it out. And I'm like, this entire scene's pointless, right? He just needed to see it once, didn't he? Because he has photographic memory and perfect recall. He never needed to write any of it down, so why did he feel the need to? That annoyed me. It's almost as if they forgot that he can do that. It's an inconsistency that should have never happened. Monk, for example, was always consistent, which is one of the reasons why, given the choice between the 2 shows, I always kind of preferred Monk. What about comedy? Given the fact that this show and these movies have always been more about humor than they've been about a good story, does the comedy still work? It does. If you enjoyed the show, you'll more than likely still enjoy each of these movies, and I'd even venture to argue that this was probably my favorite out of them all. That being said, it has been a while since I saw the others, which aren't as fresh in my mind. Psych 3, This Is Gus, however, was a film that contained an engaging mystery, plenty of laughs throughout, as well as heart. There's little to complain about here in terms of being a Psych fan. So can you psych out, as they say? I think so. So, from a technical or unbiased viewpoint, as I said before, Psych 3, This Is Gus, and any of the other movies seen in the same series aren't really trying to be a cinematic experience. It doesn't feel like a movie whatsoever. So in terms of the technical aspects, there's not much going on there. There is, however, a lot of chemistry between the characters. They all have individual importance throughout the film, so that's definitely a positive. And narratively, it flows like a fine wine, technically speaking. So it's actually not bad at all with a score of 82%. As for how I personally felt about it, or my bias score, I had fun with it, so this score won't be too far off the unbiased score. Most of my complaints, again, had to do with the fact that the gimmick that made the show so good in the first place doesn't really exist anymore. But it is funny, it has heart, and it's mostly engaging. This is 78%. When those two scores are combined, we come to the final rating of 80%. 80 out of 100 possible stars. Guys, have you seen Psych 3, This Is Gus, that is now streaming on Peacock? And if so, I want to hear your thoughts on it in the comment section down below. As for YouTube, you guys know what to do. Hit that like, subscribe button, and bell to be notified when I come out with my next review. And until then, peace out.
Dave examines movies we just watch for fun. Davey is the expert. He is the #1 critic that I go to when I need